Welcome to this definitive 10-minute masterclass on clinical reasoning. Today, we are moving beyond the basic symptoms. We are going to explore the deep cognitive architecture that governs every critical decision you make at the bedside. Over the next 10 minutes, we will dissect the dual systems of our mind, understand how we organize vast medical knowledge into illness scripts, and expose the 7 deadly cognitive traps that can compromise patient safety. This is about transforming your practice from intuitive guesswork to systematic clinical excellence. Consider the sheer scale of modern medicine. We are currently managing over 60,000 known diagnoses and over 6,000 interventions. Medical knowledge is doubling at a rate of every 18 months. For the individual clinician, this creates a massive signal-to-noise problem. How do we extract the truth from this ocean of data? We cannot rely on memory alone. We need a robust, reliable cognitive system that filters information and leads us to the correct diagnostic path every single time. At the heart of our reasoning is dual process theory. This framework suggests our clinical thinking is a constant dialogue between 2 distinct systems. System 1 is our fast brain. It is intuitive, automatic, and operates largely below the level of conscious awareness. It is the seat of clinical expertise, allowing a seasoned doctor to recognize a complex pattern, a clinical gestalt, within seconds of meeting a patient. Whether it's the specific pallor of anemia or the subtle scent of ketones, System 1 provides the rapid hypothesis that starts our diagnostic journey. System 2, however, is our slow brain. It is analytic, conscious, and highly deliberate. This is where we engage in deep hypothetico-deductive reasoning. We use System 2 when the initial patterns don't fit, when we face a rare disease, or when the stakes are high and uncertainty is present. System 2 is the critical auditor. Its job is to double-check the gut reactions of System 1, meticulously weighing every piece of evidence from the history, the exam, and the laboratory data. It is slow and mentally exhausting, but it is our greatest safeguard against error. Expert clinical reasoning is not about choosing intuition over analysis. It is about the masterful integration of both. The master clinician uses System 1 for speed and to identify broad clinical categories, but knows exactly when to pause and engage the heavy analytical machinery of System 2. This internal dialogue, this constant back and forth between what you feel and what the data proves, is the hallmark of diagnostic excellence. Learning to recognize when you are stuck in autopilot is the first step toward clinical mastery. But how do we feed these systems? This brings us to script theory. Our clinical knowledge is not stored as a list of random facts. Instead, we organize it into illness scripts. Think of your mind as a vast clinical filing cabinet. Each folder is a script for a specific disease. These scripts are dynamic and iterative. They are not static textbook definitions, but living mental structures that grow and change with every patient you see and every piece of feedback you receive. They represent your personal, internalized experience of the medical world. A mature illness script has 4 essential layers. First, the predisposing conditions, the patient's age, gender, risk factors, and environmental exposures. Second, the pathophysiological insult, the actual biological mechanism at work. Third, the clinical consequences, the specific symptoms and physical signs that the disease produces. And finally, the management and prognosis. As you progress from novice to expert, your scripts become thicker and more nuanced, allowing you to distinguish between 2 diseases that might look identical to the untrained eye. Building these thick illness scripts requires deliberate practice, the famous 10,000-hour rule. But remember, mastery isn't just about the time spent on the ward, it's about the quality of the effort. It's about desirable difficulties, pushing yourself to think through the cases that make you uncomfortable. It requires constant self-reflection, actively seeking out formative feedback, and a relentless curiosity to understand why your initial suspicion was either right or wrong. Mastery is built one difficult patient encounter at a time. Now, we must address the greatest threat to diagnostic accuracy: cognitive biases. These are systemic, predictable errors in our thinking that affect even the most brilliant clinicians. They are the traps built into our cognitive architecture. We will now examine 7 key biases. Understanding these is not just an academic exercise, it is a clinical necessity to protect your patients from the devastating consequences of diagnostic failure. Pay close attention to which of these you might recognize in your own practice. First is anchoring. This is the tendency to stick to a particular diagnosis based on prominent signs early in the process, failing to adjust your view even when contrary information emerges. It is the trap of the first impression, where your mind anchors to one possibility and refuses to let the ship move, even as the clinical tide changes. You stop seeing new evidence because you are locked onto the old. Second is ascertainment bias. This occurs when our reasoning is clouded by our own preconceptions or stereotypes about a patient, whether it's based on their age, their ethnicity, or their lifestyle. It leads us to see the expected diagnosis, rather than the reality of the patient sitting in front of us. We see the stereotype, not the clinical truth, and our reasoning is biased before the patient even speaks. Third is the availability heuristic. We place far too much value on information that comes to mind quickly, often because we saw a similar case just last week or read a striking article about it. Just because a diagnosis is available in your recent memory does not make it the most likely one for the patient currently in the exam room. Every case must be judged on its own merits, not on the shadow of the last patient you saw. Fourth is confirmation bias. The dangerous habit of only seeking out evidence that supports our initial theory while ignoring or explaining away anything that might prove us wrong. We stop being objective scientists and become detectives who only look for clues that prove our own theory right, blinding ourselves to the critical data that could actually save the patient's life. Fifth is diagnosis momentum. This happens when we continue to rely on an initial diagnostic label assigned by another clinician without re-evaluating it ourselves. The label gathers momentum as it passes through the team, from the GP to the ER to the ward, becoming harder and harder to challenge even when it is clearly incorrect. Always have the courage to question the label on the chart. Sixth is premature closure, the most common and perhaps the most dangerous error in medicine. This is the tendency to stop the reasoning process the moment we find an answer that seems good enough. We close the case prematurely, missing the real underlying issue or the second, more subtle diagnosis that was there all along. Never stop thinking until every symptom is fully explained by your theory. Finally, the sunk cost fallacy, the reluctance to admit we were on the wrong path after we've already invested significant time, tests, and emotional energy into a diagnosis. We feel that changing course is an admission of failure, so we keep digging the same hole even when the truth is right in front of us. Humility is one of the most vital diagnostic tools a doctor can possess. Let's revisit our case of the 34-year-old woman treated for a UTI for 2 years. Why was she failed? It was a classic combination of anchoring on the initial diagnosis and premature closure. The clinicians relied too heavily on their System 1 UTI script and failed to engage System 2 even when the recurrence and post-URTI pattern didn't fit. They stopped looking for the signal because they accepted the noise of a common label. This is the human cost of cognitive bias. By recognizing these theories, we can force ourselves to take a diagnostic time out and see the bigger picture. So how do we move from symptom checking to true scripts? Maximize your time with each patient to build richer scripts. Formulate your differentials at the very first stage of history taking. Most importantly, embrace metacognition, literally thinking about your thinking. Ask yourself, why did I make that decision? And what evidence am I ignoring? Attend grand rounds, watch how the experts think, model their skepticism and their analytical processes, and always view a wrong answer as a vital teaching opportunity on your path to excellence. The journey from symptoms to scripts is the journey of a lifetime. It requires humility, a restless curiosity, and an unwavering commitment to constant self-reflection. I hope this 10-minute deep dive has served as a valuable milestone on your own path to clinical excellence. Thank you for your time, your focused attention, and most importantly, thank you for your dedication to the health and safety of your patients. Keep thinking about your thinking. Continue to observe, continue to notice, and never stop learning. Goodbye for now.